Today, we're going to talk about what happens when you build what you believe is a huge potential company, billion-dollar idea, and expose it just enough to scale, and then watch a massive corporation come in and copy it before you really have a chance to build anything. The conversation centers heavily around patents and intellectual property, with the huge caveat that I am not an attorney. Our guest is not an attorney. We spend time talking about corporate piracy and the real pain behind building something original, which is something I'm very acutely familiar with from my bottle keeper days. We get into a lot, but this conversation is really about resilience. It is about learning to embrace pain, how to protect your ideas without becoming absolutely paralyzed, turning negatives into positives, and using your own hardship to help other founders keep going. Our guest is Amanda Sima. I am Adam Callinan. This is Growth Mavericks. Welcome to the Growth Mavericks Podcast, where we know that entrepreneurship isn't just about strategy. It's about stamina. It's about disrupting your default and getting comfortable being uncomfortable so you don't burn out before you break through. I'm your host, Adam Callinan. Let's get to work. Have you always been entrepreneurial, or is that a bug that struck you late? I was not the kid that was like selling rocks to the neighbors or managing a tribe of multi-level marketing school kids. So
yeah, no, same.
Later in life.
Yeah, I never even did like a lemonade stand. I was a shy kid, very introverted. I still kind of am shy. No, I mean, I definitely have always been a creator of some kind, and I wouldn't say artistic, but creative as a young child. And I went to college. I went to the Ohio State University. Graduated in 2005 with an absolutely worthless history degree. Thought I was going to go to law school and took one pre-law class. And I was like, no, this is too disciplined for me, too disciplined thinking. Like, as much as the law fascinates me, I just knew pretty quickly like that wasn't right for me. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this degree? Was really into politics. I had a history professor who I befriended, and she connected me with a campaign. At the time in Ohio, there was a gubernatorial race. I joined a campaign. They threw me into fundraising. So before I knew it, I was traveling the state raising money for this high profile campaign. And so I was like meeting a ton of entrepreneurs, self-made businessmen, women. And I think that was like the first time it sort of manifested in my mind, like, you know, there's a real path to financial freedom. There's a real path to building generational wealth for your family. I had just come from a middle-class family. My parents worked 9 to 5. Knew I never wanted to do that. I was like really unattracted to their lifestyle. But that was really the first time that I was like, these guys can do it. They're just like me. Like, I can do it, right? And so I continued to fundraise. I would say probably my first sort of delve into entrepreneurship was just very quickly I started working for myself. So I was like taking on multiple candidates and just had like my own little firm in Ohio. I wouldn't even call it a firm. I just had my own I just worked for myself, took on clients as I could, mostly statewide races. And then, I say a lot with business ideas. You're either kind of inspired by something or you're inspired to like solve a problem. And with my first business, I was definitely inspired by something. Obviously a big Ohio State fan, giant fan base. It's just like a culture in Columbus, Ohio. And my grandmother had like a ton of merchandise from the decades long merchandise in her basement. She was just kind of a hoarder. And she gave me a vintage Ohio State sweater one day. And I wore it on game day and I was like, this is really cool. Like, this does not exist. And what if I recreated this, modernized a little and sold it? And so that was sort of my first delve into entrepreneurship, and like my real first business at the age of 26 was Alma Mater. It was a licensed apparel company.
How did you negotiate licensing like that then? Because I'm sure it's changed a lot.
Yeah, I don't know what it is now. I think it's probably much more competitive now because some of the companies have gotten so big, but definitely back then, even like I was up against Nike and like Adidas, like the largest apparel companies in the world. And that, yeah, so the very first thing I did was delve into the licensing because I knew how competitive it would be. And really, the only way you get a license and I think in any sports market is like you have to have something different that no one else is doing. And it has to be creative enough where the school thinks there's like a market for it because they want to make money on your company. I knew I wasn't going to get Ohio State right off the bat because it was probably the most sought after license, maybe still is, even though I was an alumni. So I actually went to a couple bigger schools, D1 schools that did licensing in-house, which meant I didn't have to go through a third-party contractor. I worked straight with the licensing department. Thought that might be a little bit of an easier procedure. And that was University of Iowa and Michigan State, and got both of those licenses, which I think immediately gave me a little bit of credibility. And so then once I had those under my belt and I had like a little bit of sales history, and honestly, the garments just spoke for themselves. I mean, they were high quality, they were super unique and not easily like replicated. Like it's not something in even Nike's wheelhouse, right? And so, yeah, when I applied, unfortunately, that was sort of my first experience with corporate piracy because Ohio State at the time had employed an apparel company as their main licensee. And if you wanted to become an apparel licensee, you would be considered a sub licensee under an this large apparel company. And I thought, well, I'm not really comfortable with that because the application process is pretty in depth. Like you have to disclose everything from your designs to your factories to your sales strategies. I mean, everything, maybe with the exception of your spec sheet. Like it made me uncomfortable, especially because I knew I had something super unique. And in apparel, as you know, that's nothing you can patent or copyright, So I obliged and I applied. And so, yeah. And by this time I had brought on like friends and family investors. So I had some money. I had some significant money behind me. And I was thrilled. We got the news that, we got the license. And I was like, okay, this is like, we're on a path to growth now because I knew pretty quickly other licensees would fall in line like massively after we got Ohio State. And then like 2 weeks later, I get an email like, sorry, no, you didn't get the license. That was a mistake. And we were like, what? Like, how is that a takesy backsy? Like, it's a pretty significant process. And my uncle was an executive for a Fortune 500 apparel company in town, and he was my first investor. And he's like, maybe check with your factory to see if anything funny is going on. And so I emailed my factory and I'm like, did a company contact you about making sweaters similar to mine? And never in a million years, I think he would say yes. And he said yes. And I was like, is this the name of the company? And he said yes. And I'm like, and he showed me all the correspondence. So they basically tried to cut me out of the process, take my concepts, take my factory, and take my license. And luckily, in that situation, just like I did with my current legal situation, like I went straight to the CEO of the company. And I'm like, look what your staff did, He had no argument. I mean, he's like, he acted like he didn't know. Maybe he didn't know. He said, sorry, we'll cut that out. And you got the license. So that was my very dramatic path to gaining the Ohio State license. And after that, yeah, we amassed a portfolio pretty easily.
What a wild, eye-opening experience.
Yeah, and there's another layer to it too, because I talk about this a lot in like my podcast appearances, because, if you have a concept or a creation or an invention and you're really scared about exposing it because you're afraid of conduct like that, it's like a real thing. And like, but you get to a point in your business where you can't keep your baby inside anymore, right? You got to expose it a little. And I was feeling really uncomfortable with that whole process. And I knew that at this point, okay, I needed some sales reps maybe to help me. And I met with a sales rep who represented that company, that apparel company, and said to me, oh, I can sell this all day long. And in reality, it's like I left And he like picked up the phone and called his larger client and was like, just take this and I'll sell it. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what happened. And so, it's just like, yeah, you get to a point where you have to expose your product. There's no way around it. There's always going to be bad actors. Maybe you're going to be fortunate enough to scale. And in my case, of course it was that's like a classic trade secret litigation, but I wasn't interested in going to court. Like I was so passionate about that line and that business that I let it go. We said, okay, water under the bridge, give me the license. And I'm glad I did because I, learned how to scale a company over the next 12 years.
So in that circumstance, you actually let them proceed with that product with your manufacturing. You just took the
Yeah.
license. Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah,
they
maybe I
stopped.
misunderstood that.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, they cut it out. He said, we'll cut it out. And in hindsight, really no one did it. And it really, after that, no one really knocked us off. There might be sweaters out there now. I don't really follow the industry closely anymore, but we were pretty safe for 12 years. And we went beyond knits too. We were going, and there's another form of protection too. Once you have the licenses, the university is not going to allow duplicitous apparel, right? So I think we were protected by that too. So if someone else came to them and said, well, we have a line of Letterman sweaters too, probably not going to get the license. They'll say, thanks, but no thanks. Like we already have a licensee, come to us with something different. So I think we had that form of protection too, because we were pretty safe. Yeah. As we grew the company from there.
There's always this decision process, and it's a harder one for younger or at least earlier stage entrepreneurs that haven't spent a lot of time in the entrepreneurial space. And that is this imbalance of risk and reward that we need to like constantly be creating. That's most of the decision making we do as entrepreneurs is built around minimizing the downside and maximizing the upside, making this asymmetric out. And that's a perfect example of it. Going into it that there's going to be, you know it now because you went through it. And these are great things to be able to share with other earlier stage entrepreneurs. You know that there's going to be some exposure risk in showing the product or connecting your factory to a potential competitor. But the upside potential with a university system like that obviously can massively outweigh the what if and the risk. And
Yeah.
that's a really, really interesting example of that.
Yeah. I mean, again, and apparel gave me, like I said, a lot of anxiety because the very first thing I did was, how can I protect it? Right. Because it was so novel. And I was like, oh, you can't protect it. And I chose to just risk it. It worked out okay for me. I had to fight for it, unfortunately, against that first corporation. But I think that's well said. Like, you have to get to a point in your mind and at peace once you've put all protections in place that it's time to just sell and scale, because sales and scale and brand equity is going to be your greatest protection. It's like the moat around the castle is how I describe it. And I went into this discussion with one of my first podcast appearances. The host is like, my listeners want to know how I build a moat. And so I kind of ran with that, like that castle analogy. And it's like, well, a moat is designed to protect a castle, right? And a castle's got walls. Walls are penetrable. They're not bulletproof, but they're important. So those are like your NDAs and your patents and your agreements that people won't talk or steal, but they're not bulletproof. And so then I went on to a bridge. Well, a bridge is like who you give access to, who gets access to you, who gets access to your product and your sales strategies. And I think that's an important protection. Also not bulletproof, none of this is, but keeping that inner circle really in the beginning, very local and as close to you as you possibly can. With my second invention, I talk about a lot. The engineer lived 20 minutes down the street from me. I didn't go hire a giant firm to help me create. I went down the street to a guy who built airplanes for a living. And that's a guy that takes his NDA seriously, right? He's got a small business that he's got to stay in business. He has no interest in being in litigation. So that's kind of an example of like maybe the bridge and giving access to to you in the early stages. But then, the moat is the greatest. It's the greatest protection because you're suddenly in the wild west of the free market and competition. And so, yeah, again, in my mind, it's like selling and scaling, gaining a following, maybe it's loyal customers and just that brand equity that is the greatest protection. And it doesn't come without risk.
What was product number two, or the next invention from Engineer 20 Minutes Away?
Yeah. So this was a company I created to solve a problem. At the time, I had a 2-year-old toddler, and I was just tired of like going out to dinner, and she would get the kids meal, and they'd bring like an adult cup, and she would tip it up, and it'd spill, or she'd tip it up to drink like this, like she drinks her sippy cups at home, or she would knock it over, and it's just like it's a constant headache for parents. And I just kind of looked at the cup like, why do we have disposable cups for adults but not kids? And I mean, meaning there were some cups, kids' cups in market that had fun art on them or whatever, but it was just a different rendition of like an adult cup, And it looked nothing like what they used at home. And so I designed a spill-proof lid exclusively for kids, which included a sip spout for younger kids who have sippy cups at home, straw slot for older kids. And then I think like the best part of the invention is just the lid around the rim, how it affixes to the cup. When you knock it over, it doesn't pop off, it doesn't spill. So it's a spill-proof lid geared towards kids. And it seemed so common sense to me. And so I started doing research, and nothing like it existed. Again, there were some kind of hardier kids' cups in market, but it was just a cup and a lid and a straw. Nothing like that I had created. And so, honestly, and to the point where like my patent attorney was like, you're not going to get a design patent on this. It's so like general and common sense. And I'm like, no, it doesn't exist. It's globally unique. And sure enough, she was wrong, because I did get the design patent in the United States and in the EU. It was and is probably an invention I'm most proud of. I don't consider myself really a solopreneur. I've like always wanted to build a $1 billion business. Very inspired by like Sarah Blakely with Spanx, who just like started from nothing, and like knowing her, the struggles that she went through in sourcing, and just the ability to scale something like that. And I knew I had that ability. And in my mind, this was my unicorn company. This was a $1 billion idea because number one, it was globally unique. Number two, the volume of usage is in the billions every year. And it's not really seasonal. There's billions of kids in the world that use kids' cups. And so the category was very, very sleepy, very limited competition. And by the way, meaning there's only a few corporations in the world that specialize in kids' cups. But there's billions of kids in the world. And by the way, my design was globally unique. And it was right around the time that everyone was going strawless. So pretty quickly got an investor, finalized the prototype here with a couple engineers, and then sourced overseas for a factory who would produce it, built the tooling. And yeah, so unfortunately, the exact same scenario as my first company, I got to the point where I had to start exposing the product. And I knew I wanted to recruit a sales team, maybe like a team of outside sales reps who were already in these doors, because plastics is very, very, very high volume. I mean, you're only making money if you're high volume. So I needed sales reps who had relationships and could get me in the door. And by the way, get me in the door quickly, because I knew it was like only a matter of time that someone would maybe copy it. And so I met with a sales rep at a trade show, and he was repping a giant plastics corporation in that category, the kids cup category, didn't disclose that to me, and was like, yeah, I think I can help you with this. And so I gave him the product. I gave him like marketing materials on it, hey, we'll be in touch about like bringing you on board. Didn't hear back from him. And 3 months later, a multi-billion-dollar corporation had a copycat product in market. And a couple weeks after that, I lost my investor. He had no interest in going up against that, and I was out of business overnight. Of course, he denies it. He calls me delusional, that they already had something like that in development. And to which I say that would be the greatest coincidence on earth, just because the products were exactly the same. And so at first,
Did they design around your design patent? Quick break, and this one is personal. Your ROAS is lying to you. I know this because mine lied to me for years. When I was building Bottle Keeper, I'd see a 4x ROAS or 5x ROAS, and I think we were absolutely crushing it. When we get to the end of the month, we'd see our P&L, and we barely broke even. Now, the dashboards and the platforms, all the things would say one thing. The bank account and the P&L said something entirely different. They were disconnected. The problem wasn't ads. It wasn't marketing efficiency. It's that those output metrics like ROAS and MER, they don't account for all the stuff that crushes your margins. These are things that are shipping and fulfillment, credit card fees, Shopify fees, the marketing agency we're using, the paid media itself. That's the only thing that ROAS accounts for. But there's all these other expenses. So I built this framework that starts with net profit and works backwards to tell you exactly how to spend ad budget and how the ROAS needs to perform in order to hit your net profit target. These aren't benchmarks. It's literally your numbers and expenses based on what's happening in your business. And best of all, I'm giving these secrets away for free in a profit masterclass that I created recently. It's the exact system I used at Bottle Keeper to get to over 60 million in total sales with just 4 employees and 0 investors, ultimately to a private equity acquisition. So you can find this profit masterclass at pentane.com. But for now, let's get back to the show.
yeah, I was just about to go into that, because at first I was actually kind of flattered, because like corporations that big don't copy something unless they see a significant revenue opportunity, right? And so I was kind of proud when I went to my investor, like, look, first copy, like, I told you it was a good idea. And then I go straight to my design or my patent attorney after that. And she's like, you have no legal recourse because they designed just around it. Looks a little bit different. And so devastated, went out of business, sat on that legal advice for 2 years that I had no legal recourse. What really lit a fire under me which led to my current litigation is, couple years I was still stewing about it. And so I went online and just started doing research, and I checked the patent office and saw that not only did they get their own design patent on my design, they got a utility patent. Really bad legal advice I got in the beginning from my patent attorney. Don't get the utility patent. It's expensive and you're never going to get it. And well, sure enough, they got it. So for your listeners who may not know about patents, like, there are the differences. Now this protects how the lid functions. And so even if I said, you know what, my product is better, I want to compete, I'm legally precluded from doing that because the two products function the same. And that just lit a fire under my ass, because I was like, that is theft. It's one thing if you're going to copy me and try to put, your crappy product out there because mine's better. But to now say that I, can't produce my own design really just enraged me. And so I started talking to attorneys again, had a lot of attorneys still. You don't have a patent case. You don't have a patent case. Finally, I came across an attorney. Praise God that I did. He was like, yeah, you don't have a patent case, but you have like a trade secret case. You have unjust enrichment claims. You have breach of contract claims. I'm like, what? Like, I had no idea any of this was like an opportunity for me. And so, yeah, that's what led to me hiring a couple attorneys to pursue these claims. Unfortunately, my story, I'm saying unfortunately a lot because I've had it I don't want to scare your listeners. Just my experience in entrepreneurship has been sensational in good and bad ways. I hired 2 attorneys. At this point, I'm within 8 months of my statute of limitations. So pretty quickly had to decide what we were going to do, right? And so the partner on my case was based out of Chicago. And for the duration of him representing me, we were disagreeing on a lot. And more than once, he told me to sort of, in one way or another, to drop my case. I don't have claims. In the beginning, he's like, you have viable claims worth big money. Let's go get them. And then we started digging into the case, and we were disagreeing on a lot. And we were disagreeing on like wins that I was having. against this corporation. And it ultimately led to like me getting terminated. I was terminated like 6 months in. Yeah, like 6 months in by the law firm as a client. 2 weeks later, I found out the entire time he's representing me, he's negotiating employment with the corporation's law firm where he now works as a partner. And so my claims in court against him are, well, first of all, you breached your duty to me. And second of all, were you doing that purposefully? Were you purposefully trying to talk me out of my case, right? And so I'm in litigation against my attorneys, the law firms, the corporation's law firm, because I wanted to sell a disposable lid.
There is so much packed in there. And I think that, this is something that I do get the opportunity to talk about quite a bit because I also have a lot of experience in intellectual property. My story is very different, as all stories are very different.
Yeah.
But there are great attorneys and horrible attorneys and great doctors and horrible doctors and great accountants and horrible accountants. And you have to be really, really careful who you end up with and pick. And even if you are really careful, sometimes it goes, can absolutely go sideways. And that's part of the risk, that we end up taking. Our story at Bottle Keeper, we went down the utility path first. And, obviously for the listener, if you're a regular listener of the show, you've heard me talk about this a little bit. Like, I'm not an attorney, full caveat, but you can very inexpensively file what's called a provisional patent, which is a placeholder patent that lives for 12 months. It's like $1,500, $2,000. See if the thing is worth doing. And then if it is, you have 12 months to convert that thing into a utility patent, because in the world of patents, unlike in the world of trademarks, first to file gets priority on the patent, not first to use, which is different for trademarks and copyright.
That's right.
So getting that placeholder from a utility patent standpoint, and then what you do is when that patent issues, you file what's called a continuation, so the patent stays open and you can amend it for this exact situation. When you have a company that designs around your thing, you have the open patent, you can re-encapsulate that new design. And that's how like a tool company, for example, will start with one patent and 5 years later they have 280 patents on, that really started as one that's just continuations that expand and tweak and change. And at the end of the day, at the time that we got acquired, we had over 40 patents, and it was built largely on that thesis of continuations, mostly off of utility patents. But it took us 4 law firms to get to that. To get to the point where we had the one that was like, oh, this is different. And it was a lot of pain and suffering in between those two. Again, not nearly to the extent that you've had the pain and suffering with the intellectual property stuff. But
well, I mean, and the reason I'm doing these appearances and opening up about my story is because, it's not self-driven. There's just too many of these stories, and like, in any industry, we can change the ecosystem of bad actors if we're just willing to talk about it. It's like, the company that has my copycat product is a private equity backed $6 billion corporation. Like, you want something, you buy it. You don't just take it. And I talk a lot about, in the United States, we have antitrust laws, and antitrust laws are in place. I'm not a lawyer. Antitrust laws are in place to keep companies from getting too big. One company acquiring another, and suddenly the consumer is sort of at their mercy. And I think there's a different sort of antitrust protection that needs to be going on behind the scenes, just like this, where corporations are taking products and designs that aren't there as part of their growth models and putting small business owners and creators out of business. I think it's harder than ever to build a company out of a concept, build a corporation out of a concept. I am living proof of it, So, and if we can change the conduct and start having conversations and create a movement, my hope is that we can mitigate this gross, unethical growth model of just piracy.
So how do you aim, outside of talking about it, do you have like a a plan or strategy? I mean, like, are you, are you going to run for office? Are you going to, you know,
Oh, God.
lobby in DC? Like, how do you start to like really impact or execute on that? I mean, look, that sounds incredible. I think anybody that's ever sold a consumer product online has experienced some version of that. I certainly have. So it
Mhm.
is no question a thing. How do you like really impact change in that?
I mean, the next worst thing is our giant, bloated, dysfunctional, corrupt government. So I'm not going to go the lobbying route and waste my time in office. I think it's really kind of more simple than that. I have three young daughters, 17, 14, 9. Technology and social media is very powerful. And this is a generation they're going to shop their values. And so I think it's just exposure. I think it's just if we can create massive exposure about the truth of what's going on and continue to share stories like mine, we can start to expose companies and bad behavior. I, I mean, I think that that's kind of been the trend as a history major, of our civilization. I mean, it's like things are good for you until suddenly they're not, right? We've been lied to. And I think that there's just not been enough conversating about corporate piracy because people, I mean, for entrepreneurship, any true entrepreneur knows that it's a really self deprecating place to be. We are not that, you know, cocky, confident person. Behind the scenes, we're questioning our decisions every day. We're questioning whether we can succeed with this every day. So it's already a really vulnerable place to be. And so the reality is a lot of people just go away because they're like, well, they have the resources and they're bigger than me and what was I even thinking trying to do that? Like they just go away and that's like so sad. When really it's just someone's job behind a desk to take what you just put 2 years into to grow some, gross corporation. So I think we just continue to share our stories, have the conversations. I'm going to tell you, it's a bummer to me that the people are just telling me what happened to me didn't happen to me and that they're fighting it in court. Like that's a bummer. Truth, though, always has a way of finding the surface. For every one person like me that fights, thousands go away. So I'm going to keep talking about it, hoping to bring these people back. I do have my own platform called Brain on Loan. It's not sort of my new business. I am starting another business. This isn't like my main objective is to grow this into anything other than a conversational movement around corporate piracy and the other struggles of entrepreneurism. But it's really just that, my brain on loan. If you have anything similar that you're going through as a creator, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, you're thinking about starting a business, it could be how to start an LLC 101. It could be like I have a design patent. My attorney's telling me not to get a utility patent. Like, what's your advice? I just turn sort of my pain into other people's progress. It's all free. It's not, you don't have to pay me to coach you through anything. And so I came up with this concept because I'm in year 3 of litigation and I'm like, how can I really spend my time positively during this time? Definitely remaining upbeat, but for me, creating is what makes me happy. Giving back is what makes me happy. And again, I thought this is something that widely doesn't exist. I think the minute I sent it out to my friends and family, I get my friend, I want to sell my business. I have no idea how. Can you walk me through it? And she's on the path to selling her business. It's just, I think there's a lot of that out there and people don't know where to turn. So maybe they don't ever start something or finish something. And I hate the thought of that. So yeah, it's just because I've worn so many hats, definitely, with the legal stuff, that's another level. I just feel like I can give back to creators and small business owners.
How do you help? One of the the key tenets of having, I hate using the word success, but I'm going to use it. Having air quote success as an entrepreneur comes from being able to stay in the game for as long as humanly possible and not give up and not, in the case of legal, which is a big like a big, hairy, ugly, hard, really, really hard thing on top of just the entrepreneurship stuff. It's like a whole separate category. Yeah, how do you remain in the game? How would you coach someone that reaches out to you via Brain on Loan that's, is hasn't had that first inflection point and is on the precipice of giving up? How do you coach them through that? Or how do you coach yourself through it?
Well, I mean, the lessons that we learn in business transfer to life, and there is no path to success. There's no path to success that's easy and fun and invigorate, like none of that. In fact, life is full of pain. And I'm really big about, you kind of touched on it before we got started. I'm really big about embracing pain as a positive thing in our lives. And because there's no way around it. I mean, you're going to experience something painful next week. You're going to experience something painful next year in your personal life, in business, certainly in business. It's just your mindset is everything when you're building a company. And if you're excited about facing a challenge, if you're excited about pain as opposed to dreading it, I think you'll be astounded of what you can get yourself through. To be worried and paranoid and scared and unsure are all normal feelings, but they're really not productive. And so, if you're an entrepreneur, I also say this too, because I'm going to talk kind of out of both sides of my mouth. I say also too, like it's really important that entrepreneurs are really honest with themselves. I spoke to a guy yesterday, he said it beautifully. When you're in such close proximity of a creation of something of yours, you're so close to it. You kind of can't see what's going on around you. And so a great example is my friend who called me and said, I think I need to sell my business. I can't do it anymore. It's affecting my health. And it's like time to make a hard decision, right? Let it go. I had to do that with my first business. I didn't exit my first business with millions of dollars. Like I didn't exit with anything. My investors took it over. I don't view that as a failure. I mean, I grew something really cool. I wasn't able to continue running it when it got that big. But so anyway, going back to your original question is just like embrace the pain. Pain is a very good, productive thing in your life that you're going to grow from because it's always lighter on the other side of that struggle and there's no way around it. So you might as well embrace it.
Are there things that you do or you would advise doing to gain that perspective? I mean, I guess on the one hand, it's like, it's easy to say, embrace the pain or like just get comfortable being uncomfortable, but it's a practice. That takes time, right? Like, are there things that you would advise that person to do? Go do hard things outdoors, go,
Like
kind of like, how do you build that durability outside of the business so that you have it in the business?
Yeah. I mean, like coping techniques. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It sounds really lame, but I know when I had struggles in my first business, I would go on like really long walks or really long bike rides and just like empty my brain. I would go to Target and just wander around and it was like I would put myself out of business mode and back into mom mode, right? I'd kind of I would embrace that because as an entrepreneur, you're not just an entrepreneur, you're a lot of other things. I'm a wife, I'm a mother. Those things kind of, your identity as an entrepreneur sort of takes over. And I've found a lot of peace in, kind of just dropping that persona for a limited amount, of time and just settling into mom mode or settling into wife mode. And then, I'd wake up the next day and like my struggles were still there and I had to like barrel through it. I think also too that good entrepreneurs turn negatives into positives, right? So like I said, what's a positive use of my time? Stewing and moping is not a positive use of my time. And so I think if you're going through any kind of struggle in your business, it's a challenge. Accept it as a challenge. Try to outthink the challenge, right? Creatively think. Take it on as a fun challenge. I know it's easy to say, but I think if you really put to work like what I'm saying, it will pull you out of whatever struggle you're in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that getting away from it, whatever that means for you, whether it's going for a run in the woods or meandering through Target, I think
Yeah,
is
like
just so critical. Just get
it is.
yourself away from the situation.
Yeah, and also, it's funny. My husband works in heart surgery, and I'm like a big crossword person. And so I said to him one time, Neil, it's weird. Like sometimes I just can't get that word, and I put it away, and I come back, and it comes right to me. And he's like, we do that in surgery all the time. We're struggling with a vein, put it aside, focus on another part, come back to it. It works. So I think if you have something you're struggling with in business, just like you said, step away from it, because cleanse yourself of it and then come back with a new kind of refreshed look, and it'll come to you like, oh, I know what I need to do. It's important.
Agreed entirely. Where would you like for people to find you and Brain on Loan, if that's a thing that you're publicly sharing, or if that's a friends and family thing?
No, yeah,
Where do you want people to find you?
brainonloan.com. It's a really simple website. It's just like one page. You submit a question. I have my own podcast. Sometimes I air the questions and I'll answer it with a guest or just by myself. Or if I don't air it, I still reply. I've already helped, a few people with really important, I just feel like I gave them really good direction on some really important pieces or stages that their businesses are at. So yeah, again, if I just like help one person connect two people that can help each other, I'm happy about it. So it's just, brainonloan.com.
Amazing. We'll make sure that we have that link and any others that you give me after in the show notes. Thank you for coming and being honest and open. That's where all the good stuff is.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Really
Thanks for having me.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amanda. A huge thanks to our guests today. Don't forget, this is powered by Pentane Financial and Advertising Command Center for Consumer Brands. Stop what you're doing, put your phone down, walk away from the computer screen, go outside, get some air, do something hard, push your limits, get uncomfortable, become more durable and more resilient, create the stamina required to get through those entrepreneurial barriers, stay in the game for as long as you can, and we will see you next time.